A lot of times on this channel, I often refrain from being one of those doomer people because even though it sells, even though it definitely is what a lot of you out there on the internet.com want to hear, that's not what I truly believe, and I don't want to give you the impression that the world is ending, the sky is falling, when in reality things are getting bad, but likely there will be a sea change in this country, and we will push back against those things. However, there are stories out there that just depress me. There are policy changes out there that are so stupid, so ridiculous, so absurd in every possible way that you cannot help but stand in awe of the idiocy that is going on in our country. And that is one of the policies that we're going to talk about today, which of course is out of the city of Chicago. And I know a lot of people say, leave the major cities, go build a farm out in the woods, go hawk trees out of the earth, and then build yourself a log cabin. I don't know what the word hawk is, but I think I was trying to say hack trees down out of the woods and build yourself a log cabin. But in this case, I actually am on board. If you're in the city of Chicago, like one of my friends who is out there, Patreon subscriber and an absolute great guy who sold his properties and has hit the road, that is a good plan because Chicago just announced a policy that is going to make the already surging crime significantly worse. Now, we have a sponsor for today's video. We're going to throw it over to them and then we're going to dive into this policy. But believe me, you're going to want to come back on the other side of this ad because this story is absurd. It is no secret that many people across this country are struggling with weight. However, it's not all your fault if you're one of these people. It's hard, and what makes it harder is that your metabolism actually slows down after age 20 by about 4% a year, meaning by the time that you're 50, you've lost 10% of your metabolism speed. One of the things to help kick that back into gear is this amazing powder with Keto Elevate. It's over at Keto with Justice, and I highly recommend it. This can help supplement a keto diet. It can help give you some of the effects of a keto diet, and it's an amazing price point at KetoWithJustice.com. Get yours before it sells out. It has sold out before. KetoWithJustice.com, my link, pinned comment, and in the top of the description. I'm just going to send a thank you to Keto with Justice. Supporting the long-term sponsors definitely helps support the channel, and I appreciate my ride or dies who wade through these controversial topics with me. Now, today's story, as I said, is coming out of the city of Chicago, the wonderful place where every weekend we hear about a bunch of shootings for about 5 minutes before they are ignored due to the demographics of the shooters and of the victims in those stories. Now, they have concocted a new policy in the name of protecting officers of all things that is so ridiculous, so absurd, so insane, I actually had to triple check that this is what they were going with, and the justification for it, the inciting incidents for this policy, are also absurd in every possible way as well. In Chicago, now and going forward, you as a police officer will be incapable of chasing a suspect on foot unless they meet very specific parameters. On top of that, even if they do fall in the categories to which you can give chase to a suspect on foot, you are required to fill out basically an insanely long police report describing everything about the chase, which will have the effect of deterring officers from chasing criminals, thus having the effect of legalizing crime. Now, if you don't believe me, I understand it because it sounds too stupid to be true, but we're going to throw it over to the local news segment, hear out their side of the argument, and I'm going to make fun of this in every possible way.
Well, here's what's new in terms of this new foot chase policy that was put in place today. Police now have restrictions on exactly who they can chase, and when they do chase, it will be reviewed by 2 levels of supervision.
So as the very nice news lady just told you, the city of Chicago is announcing a new foot chase policy, which is going to limit officers' ability to conduct chases, require them to fill out a bunch of paperwork, and all the chases that fit the narrow parameters of which they can engage in foot chases will be reviewed by 2 separate boards, effectively ridding the Chicago police of any ability to pursue suspects on foot, which is insane. What's even more insane is that the 2 incidents that are the things that sparked this are the following cases as outlined by the local news report.
Please stop! Stop right now!
This foot pursuit in March of last year led to the death of 13-year-old Adam Toledo. 2 days later,
Hey! Drop the gun! Drop the gun!
Anthony Alvarez was shot and killed.
Now, for those of you who don't remember the Adam Toledo case, we actually covered it on this channel. This was a case of 13-year-old Adam Toledo, aka Little Homicide, that was his nickname in the gang in Chicago that he was a member of, out and about at around 2 in the morning, firing guns at cars that were driving by. Now, the police were called, the shot spotter ended up picking it up, and they went in pursuit. And the 20-year-old that was with Toledo thought it would be a good idea to hand off the firearm to the 13-year-old. So when the police officer ran up on Toledo, Toledo had the gun in hand. Now, it was a split-second decision. Toledo ultimately ended up throwing the gun away behind his back, which looked a lot like he was reaching for an attacking position, and Toledo was shot and killed in this incident. Now, it is tragic anytime a 13-year-old is killed. Even if that 13-year-old is in a gang, you're 13, you can evolve past that, you can have a better life, we all understand that, but the shooting was 100% justified. This gun was fired minutes before police arrived on the scene. You don't know who fired it. This kid didn't drop it like a normal drop. He dropped it as a way to kind of dodge being charged because that's what these older gang members tell them, and unfortunately he ended up dying due to his own actions. The next case was also a case of somebody with a gun who refused to drop it, who was running away. So you have two justified police shootings, the most sensible police shootings in the world. They're both caught on video. You can't pursue criminal charges against the officers because they acted totally reasonably in that situation. And because of that, we are now going to craft a policy to prevent police officers from chasing down suspects, because what if the suspect tries to have a gun and is a threat to people and the police have to stop the suspect? We have to prevent that in every possible way. I guess the suspects are just going to have to surrender automatically and know for a fact that if they don't and they run away, then they're totally good and they're going to get away with their crime.
By May, CPD created a temporary policy. At that time, it allowed officers to pursue a suspect for minor offenses, but now that's over.
So once again, we see another stupid policy that follows a pattern of stupid policies as seen in many left-wing cities around the country, where police are having their powers removed to deal with so-called minor offenses. Now, they're going to lay out what these so-called minor offenses are, or more accurately, they're going to tell you the very narrow constraints in which an officer can pursue a suspect on foot. But in reality, you already know that this is going to allow people to commit all manner of theft, and officers are going to be powerless to stop them, even if they're running away incredibly slowly, because God forbid you chase down a minor criminal, he turns out to be a major criminal with the weapon, and you have to deal with that minor criminal. You better just legalize theft, because as we all know, all minor criminals and all criminals altogether are in fact Aladdin, and you wouldn't want to stop Aladdin because he's definitely just stealing that bread for the little kids. Don't you remember the movie Aladdin, the animated movie, not the Will Smith genie movie, because look how cute animated Aladdin is.
It's important that we make sure that violent, dangerous people are dealt with, and sometimes that means you got to pursue them, but I also want the officers to be able to come home at night.
So here you have Mayor Lori Lightfoot, by far one of the worst mayors in the entire country as it stands right now, talking about how she definitely cares about the police chasing down violent criminals, and it's important for them to sometimes chase down violent criminals, but she's very concerned about the officer's safety. I mean, they're citing two justifiable shootings where the suspects had guns that they refused to drop properly, but, you know, she really cares about the officers, and this is about the officers, because, you know, sometimes they gotta chase down violent suspects, not all the time, and definitely because of this policy, not all the time, but, you know, we really want to make sure everything's safe and totally fine. And this is why we're prohibiting and limiting the officers from being able to do their job because, you know, safety or whatever.
Under the new policy, officers may chase if they believe a person is committing or about to commit a felony, domestic battery, or a serious traffic offense that puts others in jeopardy. They can also call it off.
So the police under this are only allowed to chase people if they think the person committed a felony, is about to commit a felony, there was a serious traffic offense that puts people in danger, the person is in jeopardy, or domestic violence situation. Everything else, they're not allowed to give chase. On top of that, they can call off the police chase if they so desire because they're under no obligation to protect you. And I know somebody's going to cite that Supreme Court case where somebody sued the police for a slow response time, whatever. But in this policy, they're actually not obligated to do anything, and they could just give up on a chase because, you know, that could be inconvenient for the city of Chicago to not catch criminals. Obviously, this is going to have the effect of violent, dangerous criminals, property criminals, and all manner of criminals getting away with more crimes in the city of Chicago. Because a lot of times you stop somebody who commits a different crime, you run their name, you find out that they have felony warrants against them, or you find out that they have illegal guns, or you find out something related to that, but because you have the power to stop them, you end up preventing them from committing their next crime. In this case, the officer will have to know for a fact and feel like they're on solid ground and solid footing that the person is engaging in a felony or is right on the cusp of committing a felony to even initiate a foot pursuit, due to the fact that there's so much paperwork now being added to the officer for doing so, and you have 2 levels of review boards in order to discipline the officers for not chasing based on the narrow parameters the city of Chicago has let out. Obviously, this policy is going to be disastrous. Obviously, this policy is going to put people in danger. Obviously, this is another mechanism of weakening the police, weakening our institutions in order to let criminals prosper in our country.
When you don't know where you are. When you lose your radio and don't know where you are.
One of the things that we heard a lot, partners being separated, right? And a lot of these pursuits, as you know, they occur at night in down alleys, down gangways.
So the idea that chasing a criminal isn't worth it because at some point during the chase, the police officer might forget where he is, or might be separated from his partner, or might have to go down an alley that a criminal is trying to use to escape, is absurd in every possible way. All you're incentivizing in this situation by announcing this policy publicly is for criminals to make these escapes during the nighttime and go down these alleyways, try to separate the cops from their officers, because the officers can give up and are expected to give up on a foot pursuit at the first hint of trouble and or danger, and they're expected to not initiate foot pursuits without some higher level of evidence than is typically needed in any other place in this country. This policy is absolutely disastrous, and again, is just going to lead to more rampant criminality in the United States of America, because Chicago is doing this, which means all these other left-wing areas are going to try something like this, and we've seen the effects in San Francisco and all these other places where they stop prosecuting the minor crimes that should in fact be prosecuted.
There's now supervision from the Watch Operations Lieutenant to review foot pursuits when an arrest or use of force has occurred. Also, the Tactical Review and Evaluation Division will review every instance, and officers will have to complete documentation after a pursuit.
You know, despite what the dumb critics of this channel will often tell you, I'm actually fine with police accountability. I'm fine with outside review, but it has to be within reason. If there's a complaint, if there's an incident, if there's something worthy of investigation, I say launch an investigation, have multiple levels of the investigation, call the officers in and put them to the question, so that way you know for sure that what went down was 100% legitimate or not. However, every single foot pursuit requiring detailed paperwork, every single foot pursuit requiring review by 2 different stations is just a way to bog down the Chicago police in paperwork and in busybody work, administrative work, in order to prevent them from doing their job. But when you have to have all the foot pursuits reviewed and that starts being implemented and all these police departments have to deal with all the time and money for doing so, you think the message is going to get out to the officers on the ground that they shouldn't be pursuing anybody for virtually anything? They're trying to make policing in the city of Chicago such a pain in the ass that it is rendered completely useless. This is worse than defunding or abolishing the police, because you have the veneer of a police department there, even though you're crippling them in every possible way and preventing them from doing their job. And the people who are going to suffer the most are the citizens in the city of Chicago. If somebody snatches your purse and runs away, police are right there. But you know, I gotta think about the paperwork and the 2-stage review process that I have to deal with before I pursue that person. Maybe if he stops and surrenders, I can do something, but every single one of these cases is going to be reviewed, and it's going to be a whole process and a pain in the ass, so I can't be bothered to help you with your crime. Somebody breaks into your store, breaks into your house, they run away. Also, Chicago is not one of those places where you have the right to defend yourself. It's one of those duty to flee zones. You're basically screwed throughout the entire city based on the fact that they implemented this policy, all in the name of being upset about 2 very justifiable shootings that were caught on video and are essentially indisputable, because again, they haven't even tried to prosecute the officers in those cases, despite the climate being right for doing that, because the shootings are so easily justifiable. But yeah, this is where we're at in the city of Chicago. Now they're going to trot out some police official to tell you that it's all good and it makes sense because this person is clearly just a puppet of the Lightfoot administration.
This policy will help make officers safer, number one. Number two, it will help us train officers to be safer. So we'll learn from the documentation that's required with pursuit policies on some of the things that we could do better.
Oh, this is going to make everybody so much safer. And all this documentation, all this paperwork, we're going to use that to train the officers on what they can do better. Now, there's going to be a dramatic drop in foot pursuits, period. And that's the goal of this policy. That's the effect of this policy in a surge of crime. But think about all the safety and all the education we'll have for these new cadets who are essentially going to have their wings clipped as officers as soon as they graduate and get out onto the street, because the city has given the streets to the violent criminals, because God forbid somebody who has a gun, who refuses to put it down, who points it at the officers, gets shot after a police chase. Oh my God, the worst case scenario humanly possible. What are we gonna do? We need to implement these policies, because I don't know if you guys know this, but George Floyd was killed in the city of Minneapolis, and how are we ever going to go on in this nation without trying to save George Floyd by implementing this chasing policy, even though George Floyd didn't really run on foot? Whatever, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's gonna work out. And again, I leave it off to you guys out there in the audience. Do you think this is a good policy? The answer is no, and I know for a fact that 99% of you think it's no. But if somebody thinks it's a great policy, let me know in the comments so I can highlight that comment and we can all make fun of you. Do you think that this is going to blow up in the city of Chicago's face so badly that it's not going to be implemented elsewhere? Or do you think, like many bad left-wing ideas, it's just going to get re-implemented time after time, and we're going to hear the message that they didn't really ban foot pursuits? That's not a real restriction on officers. Maybe if we try it harder the next time, it will work better. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, you show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about the Chicago PD neutering themselves. Till next time.